I just wanted to say, firstly, thank you to Chris, Janice, and yourself for giving the experiences of what you've just described with regards to the coaching environments, the club environment, and also some of your experiences as well. I hope that's been useful to everybody. Just before I kind of open up to any questions for the last bit of this session, was just to kind of say some of the things that I've flagged and I picked out from some of the discussions in Joe's presentation. A lot of commonality and similarity of what people possibly just expect and understand or have experiences of general coaching and general club environments. And you talked that some of the things that I picked out there was the passion for coaching, the passion to be engaging, having fun sessions, all of those things. It's immaterial whether we're working with para athletes or non-disabled athletes. It doesn't really matter, and that came out front and center for me with what everybody was talking about. Yes, there's some consideration, so doing some research, getting some background knowledge with regards to impairment or adaptations, but actually the flexibility and the adaptability and the skills that Chris, Janice, and Job have just described. I think you would do that for any athlete that might come to you to work with anyway. It's just there was a little bit of extra consideration that the folks have just described there. So that was what was key and picking out from myself. I did want to just open up for any questions, but just before I do, I just also wanted to introduce Sarah Benson, who's the Paralympic Pathway Manager at British Athletics. Sarah, thank you for joining us. I didn't introduce you earlier. Job had already started his ramble, so I thought we'd better just leave him to it. But Sarah's with us as well and has been the whole session. So if anybody's got any questions, whether that be for Job, for Chris, for Janice, or for Sarah, then please either put your hand up, give me a wave, or put in the chat function, and we'll let you have a chat.
I've got
Marie. Thank you, Marie.
Hi. It's myself, actually. I'm in a wheelchair at the minute, and from an illness that happened about 4 or 5 years ago. But I've kind of really embraced getting into like the sports side of things. And I've joined a club locally. I'm in Manchester that's called CP Wheelers. And I just really enjoy like racing with them and use lots of adapted bikes and things like that. But I would be interested in becoming part of a club locally that was for, people with different disabled needs. And how do I go about doing that for a senior? I don't like saying that, but a senior.
In general, we'd signpost to a local club. Now, for the seated and wheelchair events, they're not as regular or local as you might find elsewhere, but nevertheless in Manchester there's a couple of clubs that are or have been integrated. So at Stockport Harriers they've got a wheelchair racing group, and at Manchester Sports City, not sure about the moment, but they had the Manchester Kestrels based there. Now for frame running, if you're interested in that area, that's quite a new sport, and there's new groups for that popping up everywhere. So CP Sport have set up a loan service for equipment with a company called Quest 88, who you might be familiar with the adaptive bikes. So frame running does actually transcend the adaptive bike sessions through to track. So that'd be the obvious way to go. A club link is also useful as far as competition entry, insurance, and obviously getting access to coaches. So most of the coaches here come from a mainstream club area. And as you probably heard, coaches just like coaching. So I'm sure there'll be a coach that can adapt their knowledge and background to support. So yeah, if you wanted some ideas around which events or where you could go, then by all means, drop me an email. And between me and Shelley, we could probably get you going.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Job. Thanks, Marie. Graham has his hand up as well. Graham, thank you for joining us.
Right. Yeah, a couple of questions. Firstly, when you mentioned the sort of development academy job, is that for any standard of athlete, or is it just for ones that might be on a pathway into sort of para athletics type things?
So Development Academy is probably best for Sarah to answer that one. I've said too much.
No, yes. Hi, Graham. So our Development Academy is what we'd call the first selective environment on the Paralympic pathway. So yes, they do have to have displayed some competition results and showing potential as future Paralympians. The way we select them is just from the Para 10 results and comparing them, I guess, to their peers and how they're getting on, but also from profiles of previous Paralympic athletes and how they're tracking against those athletes as well. So yes, we do select them and then we're keeping an eye out on them. So there's about 60 athletes in the Paralympic Development Academy and they can stay in that environment for up to about 4 years. Before we would either try and maybe move them back into their club if they're not really progressing as well, or hopefully they would progress on to the Futures Academy, which is when they're really tracking towards making teams, GB teams, in the next few years.
I guess my question then is, because I've got a dual blade. He's 55, so he's not going to get to those sort of levels, but obviously will benefit from seeing other blade runners and things like starts and getting an understanding of how he could be coached in those things. And I just wonder what opportunities there are for that.
Yep. So, well, actually, probably part of this series, and Paul can give more information as well. We will be looking at more information for each of the impairment groups on these webinar series, and certainly the next one is going to be on blade runners and amputations. So if you keep an eye out on these webinar series, each one of them, if there's any of the impairment groups that you want to work with, or you're already working with athletes from those impairment groups, there will be information provided in those webinars about either further opportunities or resources that can help you and support you, and even hopefully maybe set up some networks and some links off the back of it so we can develop communities of practice within each of the groups as well. We're trying constantly to be able to link people up across the pathway and across para athletics, but again, if you want any support or you feel that the athlete you're working with needs some training partners or things, there are people we can link you with, and Coral from our team would probably be your best connection there.
Okay, and the only other question I got was, you mentioned a sort of list of all the potential fixtures type thing. Is that where do you get that? Where do you be able to see that list?
That's on the British Athletics website, either on the UKA competitions page or via the Paralympic Pathways page. The calendar's on there. It's primarily track and field, but there are some road races listed. So yeah, if there's any gaps in there, feel free to email me. And just going back to what Sarah said about networking, that was how I learned, probably the same as Paul and others. Most coaches are quite happy for a visiting coach and athlete to come in and share knowledge and do that kind of casually, shall I say. So again, there's usually someone not too far away that can help do that. The other thing with amputees that I've found useful is also linking up with the prosthetist. So whenever they have an assessment, those sessions are really handy for understanding the blade setup and sort of feeding back to the prosthetist what an athlete might struggle with technically. I don't know whether Chris has had to do that before, but especially when it's a new athlete or a young athlete that's growing, you tend to find that their blades may need to be adjusted as they go along. They get more powerful or they get heavier, etc. So if the prosthetist is open, which most of them are, is actually trying to make sure that assessment takes place at the track, and then it's a relevant place. And if the NHS or charity or whoever is paying for an expensive blade, then obviously it needs to be fit for purpose and runnable. So I found that really interesting. You also get additional advice just around stump care and socks and all the other bits. So that's definitely a top tip that I would suggest.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Great, Graham. Just to add to what Sarah said, and I've seen Neil. Are you waving to come in? Good. I did spot you. Just to reiterate, the next session is a joint session that we're doing with Limb Power on the 13th of July as part of the webinar series, and that connection and links and networks that Sarah talked about and Joe mentioned will probably be more relevant to you with regards to that next step, with regards to that your particular interest. So I think that next session may well be the one that might help with creating those networks for you and the athletes that you're working with. Okay. Thank you for those questions. Really, really useful. Neil, hello. Good evening, sir.
Hey, Paul. I just want, it's picking up a different aspect really of Graham's question. I'm coaching a group with other people. We've got a reasonable number of athletes with different disabilities, wheelchair athletes, frame runners, ambulant runners, no throwers or jumpers. They're coached by other people in the club. But we've got a reasonable group. But while some of them are competent enough to become potential Paralympic athletes, none of them want to do. I don't think that's a problem, but it does limit their potential for participation in the sport. And I think we've got a gap. They get enormous fulfillment from what they do, and we get enormous pleasure from giving them that fulfillment to the extent we're able to. And they do take part in small local competitions and road races. But there is a hole for people who, for one reason or another, don't wish to become too old, not good enough, whatever reason, maybe just have other things. One of our best athletes is a doctor. She doesn't want to do anything other than being a doctor. So I don't know where I'm going with this, except to say to a group of people who I know have got the same interests as me, I think we really do need to find something which gives people who are not on a pathway to a medal a really good opportunity to fulfill themselves with fun when they've got disabilities and can't join in the conventional kind of able-bodied stuff. So it's a plea really for us to think about those people who might not be on the pathway, not to be thinking all the time about the best they can be in terms of world competition, but the best they can be in terms of who they are, and they just want to do that and get some joy out of being able to move themselves in ways that they couldn't without our help.
Thanks, Neil. I saw Sarah and Job nodding there. I think there's a wide agreement, certainly from our perspective at England Athletics, with regards to that wider development piece, and which is why this Para Athletics webinar series was key for us to put on, with regards to just making that information a little bit wider to people. I've read Katie's message, which is linked to that philosophy that you've just talked about, Neil, around all clubs and coaches being more welcoming, providing more opportunities. And it's not just around the clubs and the coaches, but it's then the competition providers. And it's not then just around that journey towards the elite level, that it's that opportunity just to be able to be physically active as well. So I completely agree. And that's part of the philosophy that we across British athletics and certainly at England Athletics, that we're wanting to create support and better opportunities for, which is this is kind of part of that journey that we're talking about.
So just on that one, it is a challenge, because in the para world, everyone thinks that you have to train for the Paralympics. We do get athletes, and we do want to see athletes that come and enjoy the sport first, whether they're going upwards or they're just happy to get fit and keep moving. So it is something that I did put that slide in just as a reality check. That's for people that are aspiring, but they've still got a long way to go. But similarly, we do try and ensure that we cover off people, because I've actually coached athletes that have come in literally just to get fit for a wedding or just to do a one-off 10K. And luckily, some of them stick or they progress. Like Carrie Denigan, who I coach, held a world record briefly, came to me just as an 11-year-old wanting to do a wheelchair race and having seen it on TV. Did not come to me to be a Paralympic athlete or anything. And frankly, our first few sessions were a struggle. You know, it was a new sport, couldn't stay in lane, and it was a winter hard work. So I think there are some things there to be aware of, that the outside world often assumes that you can only train for Paralympics, which is rubbish. But similarly, people may well have a pathway, but they don't yet know what it is because they've not come across the information, or if they're in school, they've not actually been exposed to sports. So Carrie did not do any PE in school, nothing. Went to the library or did a physio. And similarly, if you've got an athlete that's acquired an impairment, again, it's probably something they've not thought about before. And the same applies to parents. Parents won't have all of the answers unless they've, miraculously come across someone, word of mouth. So yeah, Neil, I hear where you're coming from. And we will try and sort of make everything relevant to everybody, because I think it's important, particularly as groups aren't going to have huge numbers. And like I said, it is quite possible that a group will be made up of different ages, but also different aspirations. And retention of athletes is really important. I really enjoy it when someone comes back just to carry on training or to help out with a workout or whatever, as part of the family. So we don't have any entry standards, and for classification, there's no age or standard there. You just have to be with a club and training. And likewise for competition, there's no entry standards. So the only event that does is the England's Champs. We do our best not to come across as elitist, but sometimes that's either by accident or just the way that people assume that we work for the governing body and that's the way it goes. But yeah, our love is for athletes to come in and, like you say, to be the best they can be, whatever that might be. So yeah, I'm with you.
And I'm delighted to hear it, and I never thought you wouldn't be. But I think let me just add a couple of things, really. I mean, I think the opportunities for people who don't wish to become really specialised are quite limited. It may have changed, but the last time I looked at the UK website for competitions, they were all beyond all the athletes in my group. They would not have wanted, they would have felt embarrassed taking part in events of that status. And whilst there are local events, and we had one last night actually, and they get a fantastic thrill out of it, it is quite difficult to find opportunities for disabled athletes. And I think we maybe need to think a bit more about building the base. If we're going to have a pyramid, the pyramid's not just about the top of the pyramid, it's about the whole of the pyramid. And we just think a bit more about giving the base of the pyramid opportunities so people can come in. Just give you one example. I'm involved in trying to get a new park run off the ground. I'm based in Cambridge. On a route that is accessible for frame runners and wheelchairs, because most park running courses are not suitable for wheelchairs and frame runners, but they're absolutely perfect for people who want to get a bit of experience without any kind of sense of threat. And it's quite difficult to do this. And I think more people will do it, and it will grow. And with people like me and you, everybody here, not just me, saying these things regularly and making people appreciate that athletes who are disabled have got just the same needs as athletes who are not disabled. They need the same opportunities, and at present, I don't think they have them.
I think that's a really valid point that you make, Neil, and something that I think is an ongoing work in progress. I'd like to kind of just move us back to what I said earlier, though, with regards to this. This is part of that journey that we're starting to try and raise the profile and widen the reach that we have around para-athletics and just inclusive practice within clubs and coaching. And this is that first start of that whole program.
Can I just do some magic? So Neil, just by chance, networking, Carol is okay for me to introduce you. So Carol is a park runner, wheelchair racer, not far away in Corby. So if you want to find out about establishing park run that's accessible for a wheelchair user, she wouldn't mind you getting in touch.
Yeah, because I know it is hard to find park runs which are suitable for wheelchairs. But yeah, if you want to find networked with myself, Joe can give you my contact details. I'm thoroughly fine with that. And when you say about where you've got people who haven't got aspirations to go higher, I didn't start wheelchair racing until my late 30s. And I basically do it because I enjoy it. I do take part in some races. I tend to do longer events because that's just the way I find it. But it is also, if you can network with a local club, it's really helped, because I found training with Job's Club over lockdown really helped my confidence as well, because I wasn't that confident before. So just having those little networking between other clubs, even if it's go visiting them or not, it's really good for the athletes.
Carol, that's amazing. Thank you. And Neil, Carol, I think that network and that connection and what you've just been talking about there is one of the offshoots of what we're hoping may well happen as introduction of this Parathletics webinar series. So I'm really grateful for what you've just mentioned there. I am now going to say that I'm going to need to bring it to a close, because we're 3 minutes past 9 and it's way past my bedtime. Can I just say a massive big thank you to Joe for putting the presentation together for this evening and for introducing the session, but also to Chris and to Janice for your presentations and your experiences. I think that brought to life really. It's that contextualization and understanding of what it's like in the real world, and that helps people to just contextualize and understand what some of the examples that you gave. So I think that was superb for you to do that for us.